I've always found aggregate sites to be a good measure in gauging the quality of a game. Your OpenCritic, Metacritic. Video games are extremely subjective, so if a particular reviewer gives a game a certain score, it doesn't have all that much significance to me. But if the consensus is that Game X is good or bad, it usually is. This could be a valuable tool for helping a gamer decide which games they should spend their time and money on. While I have noticed this 5-point over-under between the aggregate and my personal experience, with certain games being rated higher than they should, especially in the AAA space, and many mid-tier and smaller studio games getting lower scores than they rightfully deserve, overall, it's been pretty reliable in helping me decide what to play. For the most part, at least. Where this all starts to fall apart a bit is in the dreaded 7 out of 10 territory. There's quite a few games rated in the 70s or below that I feel are much better than their score would indicate. There's also this strange and unfortunate phenomenon to the 7 out of 10 that seems to be exclusive to video games, where they're generally considered trash. This doesn't happen anywhere else, where 7 out of 10 would be considered, good. But if a game scores anything lower than the mid-80s, it's treated as barely worth playing, forever destined to be known as a disappointment. And below 70, they're just bad games. Not above average, which is what the number actually means, but utter garbage. From my experience, this is not really the case. A 7 out of 10 is a good game. Sometimes a 6 out of 10 is still a good game. I feel that because of the general perception of what these numbers imply, games don't get played that otherwise would have been enjoyed by countless gamers. I also think reviewers, larger outlets especially, are a bit afraid of offending AAA publishers, tend to be nicer to big-name titles so they don't get blacklisted, losing access to early review codes to get those reviews out fast for that algorithm. On the other end of the spectrum, they're more free to be overly critical to those other games they're not afraid of losing access to, judging them more harshly than they normally would. Because of this, the meta does not do justice to so many games that deserve better, and gives unworthy praise to games that deserve worse. I've kind of flirted with this concept in some of my videos already, but I think it's time. Time to question that meta. Review the reviewers. Defend the middling. And show some love to all those games that didn't get enough hugs from the critics or the players. And what better place to start than a game I initially disregarded because of that very metascore? Biomutant. This game got so much hype leading up to its release, but when it came out, reviews were not kind. It sits at a 66 on Metacritic. 66. Below even what my original threshold was for what is supposed to be an acceptable score. It's acceptable. It's not like I'm any better. I saw that number and I went, nah, I'm good. I'm not immune to this phenomenon. I was looking forward to playing it. It looked fun, but I didn't because apparently it isn't very good. Then it became a PS Plus free game. Added it to the library like I do all the free games I never end up playing anyways. Yet, something about it made me want to give it a shot. It still looked fun despite those bad reviews, and at least I didn't spend any money on it, so I had nothing to lose. Now, after having played it, I almost wish I'd picked a different game to start this whole question the meta thing, because in a lot of regards, the criticisms levied against it are pretty spot on. Its tone is all over the place, to say the least. Is it supposed to be this kung fu movie inspired parable about the dangers of humanity's destruction of the planet? Or some sort of technicolor Muppet fever dream? One moment it's waxing philosophical about karma and destiny, the nature of good and evil, or about some multinational corporation polluting everything. The next it's asking you to go to the Looky Loo to find a skiddly link to repair someone's grumble scrump. It is so eye-rollingly stupid at times that I couldn't help but love its absurdity, but it completely clashes with the underlying themes of the story. It felt like the game had two different directors that didn't agree on whether the game was going to be silly or serious, so they split the difference, and it does not work at all. Biomutant is filled with contradictions and great ideas that are either poorly implemented or barely used at all. A morality system that means nothing, yet allows you to be a complete dick if you want to be, which I kinda miss in games sometimes. It's not morally ambiguous, you're just an asshole for the hell of it. It was fun to punch a freed prisoner in the face for no reason, which kills them somehow because you're just that much of a kung fu badass, I guess. But why? You could join the evil tribe early in the game and help them subjugate the entire land, terrorizing and setting fire to villages. Serves no purpose whatsoever, yet I have to admit, I did get a childish kick out of it. There's neat little puzzles in the game that are repeated over and over and over again until they're just annoying the 100th time you do them. Lots of mounts you can buy or tame to ride around the land in that all feel exactly the same, giving you no motivation to acquire them. Plus, I ran faster than they did, so what was the point anyways? There's a couple of cool vehicles that only seem to exist for the boss fights. A giant mech that can only be used in a specific region of the map and no other place. A boat that only works in some bodies of water but not others. A squid submarine thing that is only used once in a boss fight, then completely forgotten about. These vehicles would have been great to use throughout the entire map. Nope, sorry buddy, you're out of luck. The map itself? Huge, with varied biomes and areas to explore, and the game has a ton of side quests, but they're all mostly fetch quests or go somewhere and do another mini puzzle. Even the main quest is mostly fetch quests. The actual story hints at having greater moral and ethical implications, ultimately ends up going nowhere. Something about the world tree that sustains all life and whether or not you should heal it or destroy it. There is this nice little twist to the backstory of one of the antagonists. The rest mostly revolves around that tree. There just isn't much to it. The deeper meanings of your actions aren't fully explored. Regardless, it's all too goofy to be taken seriously in the first place. The lone voice actor doesn't do the story any favors either, who serves as the narrator to this tale, and also the translator for all these Muppet abominations that only speak some gibberish language. He does a good enough job, but talks way too much, either quipping or saying something that might fit on a work poster with a cat hanging from a tree, or your quasi-spiritualist aunt might post on Facebook. The inconsistent tone is what ruins it, making the attempts at depth sound vapid, and the lighthearted stuff even more inane than they already are. There's plenty that Biomutant either gets completely wrong or doesn't get right enough. As I played it, I could totally see where all these low scores would come from. However, there are two things I really liked about it, and one other thing that I thought I would never, ever like at all in any game. The combat, the loot, and the crafting. The crafting. I fucking hate crafting in games, making me stop all the fun parts to grab a bunch of crap. Here, it somehow became one of my primary motivators to keep playing. I don't even know who I am anymore. I hate crafting. Early on, I got sucked into this satisfying loop of discovering a new place, finding loot, and getting into fights. So I could discover more places, find better loot, and get into even more fights. This carried me through the entire game. Anywhere I went, I had to find every little treasure chest, just in case it might have a muzzle for my gun or new pair of pants. All these boring ass fetch quests everywhere, I wanted to do them. Most of them reward you with some high-end weapon part. I spent so much time, way too much time, more time than I am comfortable admitting, putting outfits together, trying to maximize elemental resistances, or 'cause I thought it looked cute. Making and modifying weapons was fun. It was great. Great. I can't even believe I'm saying this about fucking crafting. It was great to find a part that increased damage or added some modifier. Electrical damage, shooting saw blades at enemies, or launching little rockets at them as I pumped them full of lead. The game feeds you loot like a morphine drip, and it kept me hooked. Although, this alone would not be enough if the combat wasn't so much fun. At first, the softlock system caused certain attacks to go random directions, hitting nothing. Then, as I started to understand the lock-on mechanic, I realized I was trying to use a combo on the wrong enemy, or I was just aiming wrong. Soon enough, everything flowed. The combat was smooth. There's a good variety to your attacks. different powers to unlock, melee weapons that have their own feel to them. Even hand-to-hand combat is a viable option. The tribe leader weapons were fun to use. You are given a lot of toys to play with, making the moment to moment action very entertaining. Spraying bullets at a big group, launching one enemy at the other, a satisfying parry, dual wield swords and guns, confusion power that causes enemies to hit each other. The list goes on and on. I looked forward to every single fight the entire time I was playing. It was a bit disappointing when I'd finally explored the whole map, found all that treasure, and had nothing left to do other than wrap up the boring main quest and end this silly, stupid, nonsense adventure. But I did have quite a lot of fun along the way. It reminded me a bit of something that would have been amazing on the PS2 in a time when gritty realism and storytelling took a bit more of a backseat to good, old-fashioned, fun combat. While I do love a great story in a game, and sometimes the story is the only reason why I'm playing it, that's not what I was looking for from Biomutant. I mean, come on now. The game's about anthropomorphic critters with guns in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. What kind of good story do you really expect to get out of that? I got exactly what I wanted from the game. A 6 out of 10? This is not. It's no masterpiece. Unfortunately, all its great ideas were thrown into a giant pot and stirred around with no seasoning, so all the flavors clash with each other. If I were to give it a score, I'd say 7.6, 7.7. If the tone was more consistent or the story was better fleshed out, I'd even bump it up to the low 80s. Depending on what you're looking for, this might not be for you. But if you want fun combat, addictive gameplay loop, and a good open world to explore, it's worth checking out. Biomutant is a game the meta does not do justice to.